it was a really busy weekend for Governor Newsom. He signed 870 bills into law ahead of last night's legislative deadline. Here's a few that stood out to us. A bill was signed making California the first state to ban the sale of manufacturing new fur products. Yeah, the ban does not apply to used fur products or fur used for religious or tribal purposes. And it excludes the sale of leather, cowhides, deer, sheep, and goat skin, and anything preserved through taxidermy. Now, the fur ban is the first of its kind in the entire United States, and it starts in 2023. Then there's the reproductive freedom legislation. Now, it expands access to critical reproductive health care services. It requires student health centers on University of California and California State University campuses to offer abortion by medication techniques on site. Another reduces unnecessary barriers and requirements to access to birth controls from Planned Parenthood. And there is landmark legislation responding to the Me Too movement focused on sexual harassment prevention and accountability. The Stop Harassment and Reporting Extension Act extends the deadline to file an allegation of unlawful workplace harassment, discrimination, or civil rights-related retaliation under the California Fair Employment and Housing Act from 1 to 3 years.